the County Pulse Podcast. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the County Pulse. Now let's get this thing started.
So, Coach, we had some technical difficulties after the game. We're going to do it on the bus, right? And things just seemed we didn't have the cell power from the towers we thought we'd have. So we've rearranged that, and you've been kind enough again today to sit down with me and kind of give me a recap. We came away with a 31-12 victory at Grinnell. And I've just got some questions for you, but if you can talk a little bit in the sense about that game, and I want to ask you some things that I saw that I thought was interesting. I'm sure there's probably parents and fans who've seen things too, but from my perspective, I thought it'd be good to get into that. So talk a little bit about your first victory, man. Oh, and before we get into that, I think there's something, if I can share with you, I thought was kind of nice.
Win, that's awesome, right? But it's been 33 years since someone not named Ron Ernst has won a football game as the head coach at Ripon College. Coach Marshall.
So how does it feel, man? I mean, the first victory, and you got the game ball. So how's that? No, seriously, how does that feel? I thought that was nice that Coach took the time out to recognize you, and I know you don't like the spotlight that much, but I think it's important that we recognize that, and I know the players and coaches did as well.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. You get in the midst of the game, you don't really think about some of those things, and getting done with it. It really didn't click until we got in there, and and part of that new thing we do, just of getting into the locker room first to just have that time with the team, in that space that's kind of ours, is ultimately for those things, not necessarily for me, but when we can celebrate as a team when we do good things. And it was kind of funny. We get in there and, we're celebrating and talking about the win. And I was so juiced for our guys just to have that first win under their belt, especially coming off the week before where we felt like, it was a game we should have won and didn't, and ultimately, we didn't have a great first half on Saturday. And so to come out in the second half and kind of put the pedal down and finish the game the way we did, I was excited about that for our guys, just to be able to celebrate that first win of the year. And I didn't really think about it till he came in and he was holding the ball. And then it kind of clicked for me like, oh, hey, this is actually kind of a big deal. So, it was cool. And, as Coach Hepp and I have joked about that moment for a long time. And so it was kind of surreal to actually be in that moment and live in it. And it was fun because, all of our guys were great, congratulations and all that. And it shouldn't be about my first win. It should be about their first win. And, but it was definitely a cool moment and certainly happy to, I guess, get that first one out of the way. Now it's not a big deal. And we can focus on the next one.
Well, I think it's important. I would say probably folks that are going to watch this or listen to this think it's important too, man. I think you can do both, right? I think you can celebrate the victory with the players and what you've accomplished as a team, but I think it's also important to recognize that. I know they did a good job, the team and players and parents and fans recognized Coach Ernst and what he did there, and now you stepped into those shoes and that role, and we're as excited as we can be for you. So from me to you, man, congratulations! I was super excited to watch it. We couldn't be there, as you know, but we still watched it, and we did the live stream, hooked it up to the 75-inch TV, and it was like we were there anyway. So
yeah, it's kind of funny. My kid was Woodson was playing with the ball, and my wife's like, "Hey, be careful with that. It's important." And so getting to talk to him about why it was important was kind of cool. Just talking about how much that did mean to be able to get the first win here. At your alma mater is always a cool experience.
Yeah, and it was a great game. Talk a little bit about the game and what you've seen. I've got some questions if you don't mind, but I'd like you to kind of give a summary of your thoughts on the victory against Grinnell.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was good to get the first one out of the way. I think that trip's always tough. Just it's a long road trip. You're playing on a grass field, which we practice on one, but it's you're just not quite used to it. And I think we came out just a tad flat. Traditionally it's a game we've won by a lot of points, and I think sometimes, as much as we talked about it during the week about being ready and putting on a good performance, like sometimes it's easy to just mentally, it's human nature, right, to come out a little flat sometimes in those games, and so that's something we got to work on. But I was happy with our guys' response in the second half, coming out and like I said, putting the pedal down and putting that thing away. Was good. And we definitely, still have some things we got to work on and get better at if we want to keep putting those W's on the scoreboard. But, at some point it's a conference win and you got to be happy with it because they're hard to come by.
They are hard to come by, and we're coming up against another conference opponent. But let me jump back into that because this is kind of post game. We'll jump into pregame if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I'll break those both down separately. But talking about first, let's talk a little bit about Jack Behrens and his influence as the quarterback. It's his first, right? His first start as a quarterback, and talk a little bit about that. Being a sophomore starting, I know kind of the go-to guy is really Jarrett and what he does, but you plugged him in. I know Jarrett had some issues in the previous game, and then afterwards I was able to see him. He had some trouble there. So talk a little bit, not about why he's in or whatever, but just talk about his performance as a young man.
Yeah, I mean, Jack has been, since he's been here the last 2 years, has been, really a rock in that kind of that number 2 role. He does a great job preparing like a starter, takes advantage of the reps he gets. And we always talk about at any position, it's got to be the next man up mentality, and we didn't know kind of getting through the week who was going to go first. Jarrett had a little bit of an injury thing. So we rolled with Jack and he looked better than most guys do in their first college start. He didn't make a ton of huge mistakes, threw a pick on the goal line under pressure and, missed a couple throws, but for the most part, he managed the game really well. And honestly, kind of, I don't want to say exceeded my expectations because I had high ones for him, but he played really well. And, it was credit to Jarrett. Jack's helmet came off on 3rd down and Jarrett had to come in on 4th and end up throwing a touchdown pass, cold, which is always an impressive feat, on a bum ankle. And, what was great was, watching, kind of seeing Jack and Jarrett together on the sideline, Jarrett helping coach him. Jarrett was giving me things he saw through the course of the game in terms of some plays that might be good go-tos. And that's the benefit of having a guy who's been around a while. Him and I are kind of on the same page with a lot of stuff, and he knows what I'm looking for. And he did a great job giving me extra eyes on the sideline. And, Jack did a great job responding and being able to go out and lead us to the first win of the year.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I know both of those guys as competitors want to be on the field, right? I don't think there's anybody who doesn't want to be on the field at whatever level they're at, but particularly college level. And so it's kind of cool to see how they interact and work together for the betterment of the team. And I think that's such an important thing, not just in the game, right? But as you go in life, what's the betterment of doing things, the betterment for a larger thing than yourself? And, that was great. How was Jack coming into the game? Nervous? What? I just kind of want to step inside his head for a minute.
Yeah, he was pretty calm, cool, collected. You could see a little bit of nervousness there, going out on that first drive. And he's funny. He said even in high school, he'd always be nervous until he gets hit once, and so we get in there and get on that first drive and kind of get things going. And he made a couple plays right out of the gate that were good. So he got over that and started really really taking care of business. And he made some huge throws. I mean, had a big touchdown pass to Al, had a huge completion on 3rd and long. We were backed up in our own end zone, or, by our own end zone, and threw it up to Al, and Al made a great catch. And, he did a really good job just getting over that initial, like, hey, whoa, I'm here. That moment, is big for any quarterback, your first start. And so anybody in general, but certainly a quarterback. And so it was fun to see him overcome that a little bit. And, he was all smiles after the game. So that's ultimately what we're all doing this for. So it was cool.
Well, I think when you look at, knowing Jarrett and spending some time with him when he came down, when Grayson was a recruit and committed, and getting to know him and his competitiveness, but knowing him as a player, he has the ability to scramble a lot, right? That's kind of his thing. Not saying he can't pass. Then you look at Jack. Jack's more of a pocket quarterback. And if I'm wrong here, this is just me spitballing in my head, and I'm certainly not a football expert. But it was nice to see that Jack really had, and I talked to Grayson about this, he had the ability to get out. I was really impressed with some of those getting out of pockets and running, right? For a guy who's a little bit taller, right? Maybe doesn't have the wheels that Jarrett has. Jarrett's kind of compact, and can really get out there. I thought it was kind of nice to see that. And I think Grayson told me he had talked with Jack, and Jack said he's really been working on that over the summer. He's trying to, he's got a good arm, no doubt about that. But how do we, when you get in trouble or you see an opportunity, can you get out there and do that? I thought that was pretty good on his part.
Yeah, and he's kind of a sneaky fast guy. Like, he's not, Jarrett's certainly faster for time in 40s. He's got a little more side to side, wiggle and quickness. But, we're in, to Jarrett's credit, he's not afraid to put his shoulder down and try to run somebody over, right? He did it at St. Norbert. But, with some of that inside run game, Jack gives us some things there that he's a big physical kid, can take some of those hits where you're not quite as worried about something happening. And like you said, when he needs to escape and get out, he's fast enough to kind of make some things happen. And he had a couple 15-yard runs, and ultimately, if we can get that, we'll be really happy with it.
Yeah, and I think it's got to be great in the back of your mind to say, hey, I've got two guys, and I know you have more than that, but two guys that are known commodities that bring a different approach to the game that could really, if you need be, mix those things up, right? And I think that's got to be a comforting thought for you, to have that kind of depth, not just on too deep, but I know there's other guys that are there, younger guys who are waiting in the wings that probably could step up and do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit, Ramage. He had a standout performance, strong runs, touchdown, little bit reminiscent, probably more than a little bit, a lot reminiscent of that great running back who just ran out of town last year and heading off to medical school, Cormac Madigan. So, talk a little bit about Ramage and what he did there, because I was really impressed with that.
Yeah, Connor's come a long way. When he came in as a freshman, he certainly had he's been a great player for us since he got on campus. But his speed's increased. Our joke all week's been, you wouldn't think of it because he got caught a couple times on some big runs. But he's a great balance of speed and power. Cormac's thing was he's hard to bring down because he super strong, right? But he could wiggle a little bit and he'd kind of wriggle his way out of tackles where Connor's going to break a lot of tackles just physically. He's really he's not a tall guy. He's got a very low center of gravity, and so he bounces off people, and his quads are as big as my waist, and so he's a big, strong kid, and he does a great job keeping moving. He almost never gets tackled in the backfield. Very hard to bring down with one guy, in the box. And so, really anytime we give him the ball, I feel like we're going to get 3, 4, 5 yards with a chance to break a big one. And so he's done a great job stepping in. Certainly Jalen had a good game on Saturday too, in kind of filling in that 2 role for Connor when he needs a blow. And is really, I think we've got a great 1-2 punch there at running back that I think is gonna get a lot of mileage out of out of those 2 guys this season.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna jump to that. Jalen Brown really, I thought, showed some sparks of greatness there at running back. How how critical do you think that is in bolstering Ripon's offensive lineup in upcoming games? I mean, like you talked about, two different guys, right? Obviously, but probably two different approaches to that. And it's good to see Jalen Brown jumping in and, stepping up to the plate when you need him.
Yeah, and you ultimately it's really hard to get through a season with one running back. There's only so much beating that guy can take. So to be able to kind of mix and match those guys is a great asset to just ultimately their longevity over the course of the year. But what's really nice is they've got very different styles. Connor's a little more downhill power. Jay's a little more kind of side to side speed. A little more of kind of a finesse guy, but he's not afraid to run through people, but he's going to be a little bit more of that speed guy. And so to kind of have those two, it's a great changeup. Teams get used to defending Connor coming downhill in the A gap, and then we can hit him with Jay in the C gap, and he can make some stuff happen and try to get loose. And he hit a couple good runs on Saturday as well. So hopefully we can keep those two rolling, and it'll probably end up where neither of them will have the stats they want, but together they're a pretty good pair.
Yeah, I would think there probably is. They would never admit some individual desires there, but I would think both of them, if you had them on camera now, would really say, and probably deep in their heart, hey, if we can both combine for a victory and a win, and not get 100, 150 yards, 200, whatever their dream or goal is, I think they would take that any day than having an individual performance and we come away not as successful as we'd like to be.
Yeah. And what's really cool is, Jalen's a senior, Connor's a junior, and then we've got two other juniors, Jeremy Timmons and Xavier Getzinger, who are in that mix too, right? Where we can work all four of those guys in and feel really good. And what's cool to watch is those four, Coach Madigan does a great job with them, but those guys could get out there and they could figure it out themselves because they love each other and they love hanging out together. And so practice with those guys is always fun because, they'll just rotate in kind of freely, and sometimes you don't know who's in, and they all go out and make plays. So we're pretty lucky at that running back group right now.
Yeah, I think you are too. Let's talk a little bit about. I think he's the athlete of the week, right? Alex Mosqueda, is that right?
Yep, Red Hawk of the week and Midwest Conference offensive player of the week.
Wow, so that tells you a lot. I have to say, and shame on me, and no disrespect to Alex or his parents or anybody, hadn't really been on my radar screen. You kind of see the guys, maybe the low-hanging fruit that you can see, the guys who stand out. But I was really impressed with what he did. And we talked about this briefly, that I still remember in that. And if you go back and look at, if you're watching this, you go in, I don't remember exactly when it was, but he jumped up over the guy's helmet as the guy was into his chest and grabbed the ball and came down. How do you see him becoming a key player or continue to be a key player, down the road for Ripon in future games?
Yeah, he showed some flashes of it against St. Norbert. We did some different things this week to try to get him the ball. We kind of knew he was probably going to be our workhorse receiver coming in, just in terms of his athletic ability, his speed. We're fortunate. We're deep at receiver. Got a lot of guys that can play, and so we're able to spread it around. So he might not always have those huge numbers like he had on Saturday, but he's a guy that when we know we need one, like he's going to be the guy we go to a lot, just because he can jump, he's fast, he makes, he almost dropped the second touchdown. He bobbled it about 4 times. He was wide open, but then he'll make that catch over top of people that makes your jaw hit the floor. And so, it's great to have a guy like that where, hey, you better put 2 guys on him or he's going to hurt you. And then we're, like I said, we're lucky enough that if you want to put 2 on him, like against St. Norbert, and DeMarcus went out and had 6 catches for, had a good day. And so we're fortunate there that, hey, if you want to single him, we're going to throw it to him. And if you want to double him, we got other guys that are going to make it hurt. So that we're lucky with that room for sure.
Yeah, I'm not trying to, and people watch, I'm not trying to just pick out certain kids. We've kind of shied away from that previously. I think it's important to talk about. Obviously, you get to see the kids every day. So sometimes I'm seeing maybe the flashes of greatness and maybe miss some of these other guys. But all these kids seem to really come together in that game. And I think it's important. I'd rather have a kind of a first half that maybe didn't quite materialize and have a second half than have it happen. We've had that happen previously last year. We've had some great first quarters, been up 17-0 or whatever, and then it just stops, right? That's always a concern heading into that third, in particular that fourth quarter. So it's good to see that kind of, hey, you know what? It's a moving train, and they're peaking at the right time during that game, right? I think your peaks have to be here. I mean, you peak early and then go down, and the other team peaks at the other time, you're in trouble. So
Yeah,
good. So off this 31-12 win over Grinnell, what strategies do you think, and this will lead us in now to our post game or our pre-game stuff with IC coming up this weekend? What strategies based off this last game before we jump too much into IC, because I've got some thoughts on that, that you think we need to make sure we're doing moving forward with IC and stuff you probably concentrated this week on, right?
Yeah. I think coming out of that game, we felt like offensively, we got to execute at a higher level more consistently. Offense is a little different than defense. You got to have 11 guys on the same page. On defense, you can have one guy make a great play and good things happen. On offense, it's a little tougher sometimes, right? Everybody's got to be in the right spot at the right time, doing their job. And so that's been our focus on offense, is just, we got to be more consistent with what we do. We can't have these chunk plays and great series and then come back and go 3 and out because we're getting too excited and not focused on our job. Defensively, we just got to tackle better. That was our biggest takeaway from Grinnell, and that credit to their quarterback, man. He's slippery. He's tough to bring down, but that's our focus this week on defense. Just tackling better and making sure we're making those plays when they're there. We're giving too many second chances. They had 4 or 5 first downs on penalties, and so cutting those out will be really important, going into this week versus IC.
Yeah, I think, not that I want to focus on penalties, but I think some of those are going to happen, right? Guy gets a little itchy, he's going to jump too soon or whatever. Some of those were just silly penalties, right? Things that you got to cool down a little bit. You got to take it easy. You got to know when that whistle blows. And those sort of things, I think as we go along, guys will start understanding. You can get hyped up, and I'm sure there's John going back all day long with these on both sides, and sometimes people get a little ahead of themselves. And I think once they kind of get into like, hey, you know what, that cost us here, that cost us there, I think that makes a difference. If we can, I want to jump into this, and I don't want to cut you off, but and I'm not wanting you to give away any secret, but kind of what I've seen on social media over the last 2-3 weeks, and watching different things, is when you talk about 11 guys being on the same page, right? I don't want you to give away a play, but I just watched something where a guy was talking in the NFL, and he was talking about play calling. And he said, so what happens is this guy, we start with this play and it's this, and then another guy says, yeah, put a hook on that, do this, do that. Without telling your plays, not that anybody would know what they are, give an indication to me, and because I seen this when Jarrett was down here, give me an indication of a play. You're calling a play, and it's not like we used to do where you used to take our hand, you go down to the garbage can, make a right, come back and come back here to this. Give me a play, maybe from your days of playing when you played, that is fairly long and complicated, so people understand it's not just as simple as you would like, but it's something that you have to do, and everybody has to know what the heck's going on.
Yeah, I think, and when I played, Coach Cole's operated on a number system, so our plays were like 13 or 17 or 313. So it was pretty easy on that standpoint. I'm just looking at our practice plans from yesterday. This one's kind of long. With Bertha off, hack, Izzy right, dog wham. So like we certainly try to cut some of that terminology down a little bit, but there's. It gets a little bit lengthy at times. Yeah. So you can see how the confusion comes from once in a while.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I didn't really understand. I mean, we watched high school ball when the boys were playing and stuff, and all the parents did, but I don't think I realized, and I know it gets more complicated as you go up, that you talk about having 11 guys on the same page. It's just not like, hey, we're going to run it to the left. You have to know, and you may have something in there that means completely opposite, or something that for me as a lineman, I have to be aware of, right? Or as a
Right.
wide receiver, I'm over here, I'm not getting the ball, but I have to do this. And that's that one or two words, or that word just, I use this word or this letter, that means this and this. It's a pretty in-depth process. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and not every word in that call means something to everybody. Sometimes it's just one guy, or sometimes it's two guys, or whatever. And the O line doesn't hear any of that. They just get Tiger's drip, and so it's not. It sounds pretty complex, and once guys start to figure out the order of operations and how it works, it gets a little bit simpler. Most of our lengthy play calls are because of the formation, a tag, a motion, more so than the actual play itself, but.
Well, I know
Our defense base call is just red, so it's a little bit easier on that side of the ball.
The guys are probably going, can you just call one name, please? I don't need 10 of them.
Yeah.
I remember, and the reason why I think about this is sometimes when when I was working, we have hearings and we present cases, you're kind of quasi in a courtroom. And we would get together with the week prior to do what we call pre-panels, to go over the grievances or the hearings we have in the case. And then we would get ready for the hearing, and it's filled with people from all over Chicagoland or all over the country. And you get one rep saying to the other rep, hey, I'll give you $10, you can work in the supercalifragilistic argument. Do you guys ever say, hey, let's work in some word there just for, I can't really, shits and giggles. I'm just going to say it. Okay. I said it.
No, not really. We try to keep that to a minimum. I like to keep them short when we can. So try to not
maybe
confuse anybody.
Maybe if we're up 50-0, we can pull that off, right?
Yeah, then we can come up with something goofy.
That's right. So let's talk a little bit. We're going to welcome in back in, even though we're here, into the game coming up this weekend against IC. It's our first home game. We're not going to be at Hop yet, but our new stadium, but it's still our first home game. I expect a lot of people there. We're going to be playing against an always tough IC Illinois College opponent. And looking back, they had a tough game against Lake Forest, and Lake Forest, as you know, is always tough, right? So they can take it out, and if you're not ready. But we, kind of going through their stuff, and you probably know this. They have some guys, Destin Chance. He had 256 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. Had a running back that got 179 yards, right? This was against Milliken. This Brunstein, he had 106 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. And you have some guys on defense that were really pretty good. End up with a couple receptions and some sacks and tackles. So talking about kind of what their stats were coming off of that, because I think you have to, in some sense, remove the Lake Forest game. Because if I'm watching it, I'm not going to see what maybe I could expect, because Lake Forest was pretty dominant in that win. How do you see that kind of playing out? Given, like, let's say this kid named Chance, his pretty dominant performance in the Milliken game. What do we have to do on the defensive lineup to maybe control that? Sounds like another talented quarterback.
Yeah, he's got some ability. That the Bernstein kid, the receiver, is really good. He's probably top 2 or 3 guy in the league. And the fortunate thing for us on defense is they don't do a ton of stuff. They just try to do it really well, and they go really fast. So it's definitely a game people got to be paying attention to. If you look away too long, you're gonna miss play. But for us, it continues to be about just making sure we get lined up effectively. And again, coming back to, we just got to tackle. I think Coach Epps got a good game plan going in. Our guys on defense had a great practice yesterday going against some of that. It's always hard for scout team to simulate some of the things you do, and especially when it comes to tempo. But they got a good plan, and we've got some good ideas on taking them away. And it's just a matter of making sure we read our keys and do what we're supposed to do. I think, Milliken's a CCIW team, which, historically means they're usually probably pretty good. I wasn't real impressed with them on film. I think watching the Lake Forest game is hopefully a little better, a little closer to how it goes this week. But, the challenge for IC is They're always, really athletic. They're not always the most disciplined team that we see on our schedule, but they're always talented and they can put it together. At any point. They gave us a game last year down there. So fingers crossed the overnight travel slows them down a step.
Yeah, it does. And I talking about, seeing again, I'm using Milliken. I did look at the results from the Lake Forest game, and obviously Milliken and Lake Forest aren't the two same teams, but they do have, they have a ground game with their running back Lil. You have to figure out, right, how do we shut down that, not just the quarterback, but also the running game, to be able to maybe, if you can shut down the quarterback and maybe Thomas Little's game from IC, I think that can help be the recipe for success.
Yeah, and I think for us, our goal is we got to start fast. We got to get it. We got to get a couple stops and get a couple scores early, and hopefully get them to go away. Just because of I think their expectations to come up here and hammer us, and we gotta try to take the air out of their sails real quick.
Yeah, and I think their defense too. We haven't talked much about it, but how are we going to gear up, you think, and really navigate that, against what appeared again? And, it's hard. Is it hard for you? Because it's hard for me to look at the Lake Forest game, which I certainly didn't watch as in depth as you guys do. If I did, I'd probably need a life. Not that it's not fun, but it's not really my job. But how do you do that when you have a game which shows great promise for IC in the first game, and really the other team in the Lake Forest game kind of dominating them? How do you take that from there? And do you look at the opponents that you're facing and say that they're facing and go, well, like you said, we know Milliken, right? Wasn't too impressed. Lake Forest, they're Lake Forest, right? Just like Monmouth, just like Ripon, right? Those guys that are out there, University of Chicago. How do you do that when you're trying to figure out, do you just focus on the last game, or do you often look at the other game if that one game is way off?
Yeah, so we'll usually watch like the last game for sure, usually our game from last year, depending on coordinator changes. And, for us defensively with IC, they have the same defensive coordinator, so we know we can use that as at least a reference point. They have a new offensive coordinator, so Coach Hepp didn't watch a lot of last year's game, with what they did. And, the Lake Forest game was closer than it kind of looked, right? Lake Forest had 2 pick sixes. They had a 4th and 1 quarterback sneak that, the quarterback snuck out of that big pile that ends up happening on those sneak plays and end up scoring a touchdown from 20 yards out. And a couple of those things don't happen. I think that's a different ball game. It at least looks a lot closer than it was. Or it looked a lot worse than it was. It was ultimately, I think, a pretty close game. And so for us, it's trying to get our guys to understand, like, hey, regardless of what that result looks like this is still a really good team, and we got to make sure we're on it. We got our A game coming on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think that's the tough thing that I try to put myself in your guys' shoes. Is you watch last year's game, right, and you kind of look back on that with IC, but then you have to take out that we have, we had 20 some guys who are gone, right? That moved on, and then they probably got new guys that maybe you haven't seen, or guys that have moved on. So it's always this thing. I think you probably just look at an overall style and what they do, not seeing a lot of changes, and then realize that they may have certain pop-out athletes here and there that you need to be aware of. Would that be at least a decent way to think about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so it's our first game. I just seen, it's the first game at home. We're going to be Ingalls Field, right? We'll have the tailgate. I did ask parents, because I'm trying to get my strength up and my stamina up if they want to play pickleball, but we haven't had any takers. So we're going to play. So if any of you parents are watching this or listening, you can bring your pickleball pad. We have some extras. Just to kind of do before the tailgate, because we were looking around, just a side note, we were looking around when we were up there, and we were trying to find a pickleball court, and we're looking all over, and we go to a park. That's not it. We kept looking, and long and behold, the tennis court's right behind the parking lot where we tailgate there's 8 of them, and they're pickable. And we're like, it's right here. So we have
Yeah.
a tailgate. I think it's still going to be there. And we thought maybe we got there early. The good thing about that sport, not as tough as football, but it's a great sport for me to kind of get my balance back, some stamina, really clear up a lot of cobwebs I have both in my mind and in my body after my transplant. To do that. And so we thought, well, let's do that maybe a couple games before that. You can get them done pretty quick and then go to the tailgate and then let's go watch a Ripon victory, right?
Yeah, there you go. It's a good plan.
Or we can play afterwards and I'll say, hey, coach, come get some.
My kid's got a flag football game after on Ingles, so I'll be there for a while.
There you go. So a couple of fun trivias. We've kind of went over this before, and I told you you're graded on. So right now, you're about 50-50. So let's start studying them. What is, and I'm hoping these are right. I didn't check the sources too good. I try to ask for some things there, but what's the highest number of points scored by the Ripon College football team in a single game, and when did it happen? When did it happen?
I think there's one. I don't think it's 82 from last year. I think there's one like 90-point game from like 1912 or something. But 82 is probably the most in a normal recent modern football game.
So the answer is the highest number of points scored by Ripon football in a single game was 82, and that was last year. But the most points, the absolute most points scored with the largest victory was 86-0 over St. John's Military in 1960.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. I thought there was one. I thought there was one like way early that was pretty bad, but.
And that may be true. I'm just going by whatever's written down here. You'd think I would be able to check these, but as I told you, Saturday we had trouble. That was the day we couldn't get connected. Today was my day to have 8 million things going on, and I ran through some stuff, looked at, and go, I should double check them. I didn't have time. So
I think it's probably right.
This is a subjective question. All right. Who is the most famous football player to come out of Ripon that you can think of?
Ooh.
I mean, besides yourself.
Wow, that's not accurate.
It's a Wisconsin guy, and I'll tell you, he played for the Green Bay Packers.
I can't think of his name.
Jeff Dexter.
I'm not gonna come up with it.
What I have here is a guy by the name of Cecil Isabel. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah.
And it says here, he played for the Green Bay Packers, and he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So he was inducted in 1967. That was before you were born, but I was 1 at that time. So whatever that means. We're going way back because you know what? I was looking for questions and I always ask for help on that stuff. And I did that. And the problem was when I did that, it's like, help me find some answers, trivia answers. And I said, what's their football name? Red Hawks. I'm like, okay, how about something else, right? Yeah. And then it asked for like, who's the winningest coach? I'm like, okay, let's get to something that maybe is a little bit more difficult. So I throw these things out there just to have a little fun. And you were good on, I think, both of those. I'm sure not everyone remembers Cecil's name, but it's good to know people come out of school, come out of college, and they play. They can play at different levels. And we had, we've got some guys. I seen an article on one of our guys from last year doing an interview about an NFL prospect kind of interview. And I don't recall the name. I should have that, but I think it's so cool that our guys, I think guys get lost in that Division I, Division II stuff, in particular Division I, the big guys. We have some good history here at Ripon. And that's the reason why if there's any recruits that ever watch, you should probably come here. I mean, I know Alabama's out there, Clemson, but it's Ripon. And we may talk about you more than what they do at those big schools, right?
Exactly.
Yes, exactly. So how's this week shaping up so far, Coach?
Good. Like I said, we had a good night of defense had a good night of practice last night. Offense was a little bit jumbled, but we're working on some new stuff. So kind of as expected on a Tuesday. going a little bit late tonight, just a little schedule change, get under the lights, crank some music, and, hopefully have a great one. I know our guys understand the challenge of what's coming this week, and we got a good team coming into town, and we got to make sure we've got everything straightened out. So I expect tonight to be pretty good, and, keep chugging forward every day.
Yeah. And so your Friday always kind of is it more of a walkthrough? I mean, you probably lower the intensity a little bit there.
Yeah. So it's
We don't have Thursday yet, but
yeah. The term for Friday is generally walkthrough. For us, it's still, it's not a total walk, right? We're moving and getting a little bit of a sweat in. There's some physiological benefits to sweating a little bit the day before a game. So, we're moving, running through special teams, and, both sides are a little different. Offense, we run through all those situations that we're going to see over the course of a game, red zone, third down, short yardage, openers, all that stuff. Defense is a little more walk and talk, just making sure they're lined up and they're ready for what's coming. But, it's a little bit lighter. We only go about an hour usually. So.
Have you guys had the opportunity to be on the new turf yet? Has they let anybody on there yet?
I've been on it, but that was just like I had to go double check that they didn't have anything wrong. So we should be able to get on it after next week. So the plan right now is it's released to us on Friday. Okay. So next Friday. So we'll see.
They've kind of announced formally that the first game will be, I don't remember, the 30th. Is that right? 29th?
Yep. 30th. Yep.
And that game is against
Cornell.
Okay. Well, that's good. And then, but there's going to be a big celebration as well. I think official unveiling. The inaugural game's not going to be, it will be on the 30th, but there's a big celebration, I think against Monmouth, right? Where the college.
21st will be Lake Forest.
Oh, Lake Forest. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that'll be a fun day because women's soccer is going to play at 9 before us, and so like it'll be a cool day to get two teams on there, and ultimately just celebrate this awesome place that we get to use, and should be a fun day.
Look, we're looking forward to this weekend, Coach. It's going to be an exciting time. Our first game, 2023 against IC. So. Good luck, and get those boys whipped into shape and ready for a win.
Thank you. Yeah, look forward to seeing everybody on Saturday.
Sounds good, Coach. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the County Pulse podcast. Make sure to find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the County Pulse.